Chapter 701, Changes in the Seed 2. Next day, dawn. When young Luo Feng opened her eyes, Qingyan was already quietly waiting for her in the room. After she saw the young lady waking up, she spoke somewhat excitedly, "Miss, did you know? Gao Ling, who you locked up a year ago, is on the verge of dying. It's estimated that he can at most hang on for another hour." A year ago, young Luo Feng did not kill Gao Ling on the spot but instead locked him up in the back garden to suffer unbearable torture. In this year of living but wishing he was dead, he could eventually no longer endure it. Now Qingyan just obtained news that although Gao Ling's injuries had been treated, he was about to die. As such, she hastily ran to young Luo Feng's room to report this matter to her. "Gao Ling, I almost forgot about him." Young Luo Feng raised her eyebrows. "In any case, we were acquaintances in the past and since he's about to die, how can I not send him off? Qingyan, let's go." After she spoke, young Luo Feng got up from the bed, freshened up, and walked towards the backyard. In the yard, Gao Ling was lying on a wooden plank and his eyes contained despair. Those few people who had been locked up together with him by young Luo Feng could not endure such torture and had committed suicide that very day, while he was the only one who persistently held on. Creak. The worn door was pushed open by a jade-like hand, and soon after a gorgeous young lady walked into the room along with her servant maid. Looking at that face that he yearned for day and night, Gao Ling choked, as though something was stuck in his throat. In this past year, he never left this rundown yard. Even though that was the case, there were still some people who would deliberately disclose her outside achievements to him. For example, this woman had broken through to be a sky-level cultivator, and also that the godly Dr. Tianya was her disciple. And just now, he heard that young Luo Feng took out a bowl of wine last night and helped Elder Rong from the medical pavilion break through. If he had never heard her in the past, would all her current glory belong to him? Gao Ling regretted it extremely, to the point that his intestines were about to turn green from it. If he could do his life over, he would hold on to her tightly and he would never do things that would make him feel remorse for a lifetime. "You have actually lived for over a year," young Luo Feng shot a glance at Gao Ling and lightly smiled. "I thought that you would not be able to endure the torment and commit suicide. It seems like you're truly craven and cowardly." He was indeed craven and cowardly, without the courage to commit suicide. Otherwise, he would not have suffered being forcibly tormented for a year and a half. Young Luo Feng, Gao Ling's throat was very hoarse, just like a hand that was rubbing on the ground. "If I did not get together with Mu Wushuang, would you have married me?" "No, I wouldn't have." Young Luo Feng's answer was very straightforward, without leaving any leeway. "Impossible." Gao Ling shook his head and spoke in disbelief. "You loved me with all your heart back then, so why would you not marry me? If it wasn't because I had harmed you, you would definitely be my wife." Young Luo Feng slowly walked towards Gao Ling and the corner of her lips curved up as she spoke. "Do you want to know why?" Gao Ling nodded his head. He wanted to know why. Looking at his expression, young Luo Feng lowered her body and spoke using a volume that only they could hear. "Because the young Luo Feng who loved you as such hanged herself after she was heartlessly abandoned by you. I am only a soul from another world that borrowed her body to revive. Therefore, I never loved you." Gao Ling opened his eyes wide, and his expression was filled with astonishment. "You. Gucci." Before he managed to finish speaking, the long sword in young Luo Feng's hands had already thrust into his chest and ended his life. Chapter 702, Changes in the Seed 3. "Miss, what did you say to him earlier on?" After walking out of the run-down yard, Qingyan turned towards young Luo Feng and asked curiously. Young Luo Feng smiled, words that would make him despair. Actually, even if young Luo Feng did not say those words, Gao Ling had long been in despair as he was only dragging out an ignoble existence. To him, death was the only way to relieve himself. Looking at his scrawny body with scars all over, she could see that he had truly suffered great torment during this period of time. Perhaps, he had also considered committing suicide but ultimately did not dare to do so. "Qingyan." Young Luo Feng's footsteps slightly paused and she spoke over her shoulder to Qingyan. "Today, I will be leaving here together with Yun Xiao for the other continent. You will all be in charge of protecting the Yun family and preventing them from being harmed in the slightest." "Miss," Qingyan's heart trembled and she lowered her head, "you just came back not long ago and you're about to leave again." Young Luo Feng became silent for a long time before speaking. "This time, I'm leaving to find an extremely important person. If the Yun family were to meet any troubles, you can head forth to the medical pavilion or Ning family to ask for help. However, right now in the Longxiao continent, perhaps people who dare to touch Yun family no longer exist. Not only did the Yun family have Elder Ning, they also had Tianya to support their backs. In this entire continent, who would dare to harm them? This was also the reason why she dared to leave for another continent. Miss, you can rest assured. I will definitely guard the Yun family and wait for your return. Qingyan's expression was resolute as she made a solemn vow to safeguard the Yun family. Yun Luofeng paused for a moment and spoke. This time, I will be secretly leaving together with Yun Xiao. In addition, I have hidden a large quantity of spirit wine in the basement, and you can retrieve 2 flasks for my grandfather every day. I understand, Qingyan reverently and respectfully replied. May I know why Miss is secretly leaving? It's because of Xiao Bai. Yun Luofeng helplessly spoke. If Xiao Bai were to know that I am leaving for the other continent, she will definitely insist on following. But right now, that place is extremely dangerous and I might not be able to even protect myself, so how can I bring her to take the risk? Therefore, I can only leave her here. Xiao Bai's strength was not in the least lacking. However, there were numerous powerful people on that continent and she would only be in existence at the bottom of the chain. Thinking it through, Yun Luofeng continued, for this period of time, I have written down a few methods of cultivation for Xiao Bai. After I leave, you shall give it to her. Qingyan took the book that Yun Luofeng had passed her and spoke resolutely, Miss, you can rest assured that I will definitely hand it over to Miss Xiao Bai. I've already instructed what there is to be instructed. I will be leaving in a little while with Yun Xiao. You all must take care of yourself. After Yun Luofeng said these words, she walked towards the bedroom without consulting anyone. Right now in the bedroom, Yun Xiao had already tidied up all the gear and was waiting for her. Let's go. She shrugged her shoulders and walked out of the main gates while leaving without even turning back. Lin Ruobai was originally someone who could not stay idle and as such, she would go out shopping every morning. However, this time when she returned, what waited for her was the news that Yun Luofeng had already left. Suddenly, she hugged the book that Yun Luofeng had left for her and cried bitterly. Master, I know that my strength is too weak and I can only hold you back no matter where we go. But don't you worry, I will definitely cultivate properly and strive to find you soon. She wiped her tears and stood up, while her hand tightly held onto the book that Yun Luofeng left for her. At this moment, a firm and indomitable glimmer was contained in her gaze. Master, I will definitely train properly and not betray the expectations you have for me. Chapter 703, Falling in Love at First Sight 1. The forest of no return extended continuously for 1,000 miles without any signs of human habitation. Ever since entering the forest of no return, Yun Luofeng had not seen anyone and their surroundings only had the trails of spiritual beasts. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Just then, Yun Luofeng heard sounds of activity and her originally vigilant mental state became increasingly stretched taut, while her hands gripped tight on her longsword. Within the forest of no return, one would immediately lose their life if they were to even slightly relax their vigilance. Careful. Yun Xiao guarded the young lady behind his back, and his normally emotionless face was also stretched taut as if he feared that the young lady behind him would be harmed. Plop. When both of them were fully cautious of their surroundings, a pink hamster scuttled out from the underbrush. It staggered once and collapsed in front of Yun Luofeng. It appeared that this hamster had suffered an attack from other spiritual beasts and was already injured to the point where it was dying. The instant that Milk Tea saw this pink-colored hamster, he seemed to have received an electric shock with electric currents flowing through his entire body, unexpectedly bringing about an indescribable feeling. Could it be that this was the legendary falling in love at first sight? Who? The moment the pink hamster collapsed, a white-colored flame cat leapt out and pounced on the hamster that had fallen on the ground. Master, save her. Seeing that this pink hamster was about to be attacked, Milk Tea recovered his senses and hastily spoke. Scram. Boom. When the flame cat had dashed closer, Yun Luofeng loudly shouted and her body's earth-shattering aura rushed forth towards the flame cat. The flame cat's body suddenly flew out and hit against a tree trunk. It shot a glance at the hamster in front of Yun Luofeng and made a decision to turn rapidly and leave. This human was not someone it could afford to offend, so it could only let go of its prey and escape without delay. Master, Milk Tea slowly climbed down from Yun Luofeng's sleeves and spoke timidly, can you save her? Looking at Milk Tea's timid look, Yun Luofeng couldn't help but raise the corner of her lips. I remember that you're a hamster that doesn't like to meddle in other people's business. Tell me truthfully, did you take a fancy to this female gold-seeking hamster? Milk Tea bashfully lowered his head and had the look of a young woman's shyness. Yun Luofeng stared blankly. So it turns out that Milk Tea fell in love at first sight with this female hamster. Milk Tea, I'll take a look at this gold-seeking hamster's injuries. Yun Luofeng slowly walked to the pink hamster and checked. Her injuries are quite serious, but it's not much of a problem. She should be fine if I give her a stock of a medicinal spirit herb to consume. Ever since the tree sapling had absorbed all the medicinal ingredients, there were no other changes. As such, the other medicinal plants in her space had been preserved. Yun Luofeng conveniently took out a stalk of a medicinal spirit herb for treating injuries and carefully tore off a leaf. After that, she used her hands to squeeze out a few drops of juice and dripped it onto the female hamster's wound before letting her consume the leaf. Immediately, the wounds on the female hamster recovered at a speed that one could see with their naked eye, and very soon, she opened her eyes. How are you feeling? Milk Tea nervously looked at the female hamster and didn't even know where to place his hands. The female hamster stared blankly. This gold-seeking hamster could speak. Within the hamster clan, only her mother could speak the human language. Where did this gold-seeking hamster come from, and why was it able to speak? This, Milk Tea stroked his small brain and bashfully spoke, it was my master who saved you earlier on. Where is your home? I'll send you back. Chapter 704, Falling in Love at First Sight 2. Hearing Milk Tea's words, the gold-seeking hamster climbed up from the ground immediately and cupped her hands together as she bowed towards Yun Luofeng. Master, she is expressing her gratitude to you. After saying that, Milk Tea turned towards the gold-seeking hamster. Right, I have yet to ask your name. Chip Chip. Meng Meng, this name is as cute as you are. Oh right, where is your home at? Chip Chip. Yun Luofeng had turned into a stone. Was Milk Tea that good at flirting? When did he learn this trick? Master. After Milk Tea had inquired sufficiently, he turned and looked at Yun Luofeng as he spoke while being somewhat embarrassed. Can we send Meng Meng back home? I would not feel at ease if we were to leave her to return alone. All right. Yun Luofeng nodded her head. She wanted to head towards the continent of no return, but she was not in a rush. Furthermore, nothing was more important than Milk Tea finding a wife. Master, I love you so much. Milk Tea felt delighted and suddenly pounced towards Yun Luofeng. However, before he had gotten close to her, he was slapped away by a large hand. Yun Xiao extended his hands and pulled the young lady into his embrace while glaring at Milk Tea in warning. The meaning of that expression was evident. Milk Tea felt indignant, but he didn't dare to be disobedient towards Yun Xiao and could only limp towards Meng Meng. Meng Meng, you can lead the way ahead, and we will send you back home now. The strength of gold-seeking hamsters wasn't very strong. Within this forest of no return with danger all around, it was hard for them to defend themselves. As such, they resided underground, 100 feet beneath in order to survive. At present, a castle quietly stood upright in an underground cavern. After two of the gold-seeking hamsters who were guarding the door spotted Meng Meng's emergence, their eyes immediately brightened and they ran into the castle to report. A moment later, a queen hamster wearing a crown on her head had brought a group of gold-seeking hamsters and quickly walked over. My child, Meng Meng, you truly scared your mother to death. The queen hamster walked towards Meng Meng and hugged her in her arms. 2 rows of tears flowed down in her joy and delight. Since they didn't know what Meng Meng and the queen hamster had communicated, the queen hamster walked towards Yun Luofeng and deeply bowed. I would like to thank both of you humans and this hamster brother for saving my daughter. Otherwise, my unsensible daughter would have become food for other spiritual beasts. May I know if you would do me the honor and let me invite you to dinner? A light flashed across Yun Luofeng's eyes and she slightly smiled. Sure. The queen hamster smiled. I shall instruct my subjects to prepare for the banquet and please do rest for a moment first. When the banquet begins, I will instruct my men to call for you. After saying this, the queen hamster instructed hamsters from the clan to guide Yun Luofeng and the others to take a rest. Then she went to prepare for tonight's banquet. Yun Xiao walked to Yun Luofeng's side and used a tone that only both of them could hear. Are there other reasons for you wanting to stay? He knew that Yun Luofeng wouldn't want to stay here unless she had discovered something. Having heard what he said, Yun Luofeng slightly nodded her head. It's extremely difficult for gold-seeking hamsters to break through, and they are required to consume medicinal ingredients to be able to advance in rank. However, I saw that there are many residents of this hamster clan that have already reached middle-level cultivation, and even a portion of them are in the high-level realm. In others' point of view, their strength wasn't very strong, but these were gold-seeking hamsters that were before them. Based on their cultivation speed, if they did not have sufficient medicinal ingredients they could absorb for years, they could only live as a low-level cultivator for the rest of their lives. Of course, this is not the only reason I stayed behind. After all, this is the forest of no return, and perhaps the hamster clan has luckily discovered rare medicinal ingredients. What's more, the gold-seeking hamsters are famous for their sense of smell, and they can sniff out medicinal ingredients that are located far away. Chapter 705. Falling in Love at First Sight 3. What made me curious is that the queen hamster could actually speak the human language. Her hands lightly propped her chin while her gaze contained contemplation. Spiritual beasts must at least be at the god-level realm to speak the human language. The level above sky-level cultivator was god-level cultivator. For this queen hamster to be able to speak proved that she was a god-level cultivator. However, even if she were to consume 1,000 stalks of 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs, it would be impossible to break through to the god-level realm. Thus, I wanted to stay, as there might be some treasure within this hamster tribe. Naturally, there was another reason. The other reason was Milk Tea, who fell in love at first sight with Meng Meng. In any case, this was Milk Tea's first love, so how could she not lend him a helping hand? In the underground world, there was no daytime. However, the spiritual beasts could differentiate the time without it. Young Luo Feng did not rest for a long time before there was a gold-seeking hamster who came to call her to join the banquet. In the banqueting hall, the queen hamster sat on a chair set up on high, and the back of the chair had a design of a hamster head. Meng Meng obediently sat behind the queen hamster, and her large eyes were smiling towards Milk Tea. After she saw Milk Tea looking over, she winked at him, and her face was full of wit. Bang! Milk Tea's brain crashed on the spot as he looked at Meng Meng foolishly, completely unable to stop his frantically beating heart. Master, did you see that? Meng Meng was flirting with me, she's flirting with me. At this moment, Milk Tea's eyes seemed to be radiating hearts as his face revealed him being foolishly in love. Young Luo Feng wanted to say that the other party was clearly only greeting you, but it turned into flirting in your eyes. My guests, you should have noticed it, but other than me and my tribe, the other gold-seeking hamsters' strengths are weak. The queen hamster smiled bitterly as she spoke. In this forest of no return, there are too many powerful spiritual beasts, so we were forced underground. Furthermore, I have also told them repeatedly that without my accompaniment, no clansmen are allowed to leave the underground. Who knew that my daughter would be so disobedient and had ultimately gone up to the surface? Young Luo Feng put down the wine cup in her hands, got straight to the point and asked, gold-seeking hamsters will typically not have such a huge accomplishment for their entire life. May I know through what means did you manage to advance to be that powerful? Perhaps young Luo Feng had asked a question that she wasn't supposed to. All the subjects of the hamster clan turned their heads towards young Luo Feng in a split second, and their gaze contained warning. Facing these warning gazes, young Luo Feng pursed her lips and her pitch-black eyes directly stared at the queen hamster, seemingly not noticing their gaze. The queen raised her hands, putting a stop to her subjects as she faintly smiled. I had drunk a pot of spring water that year by chance, and it allowed my strength to break through to the god-level cultivation realm in an instant. As such, I became the queen of the hamster tribe. Spring water? Young Luo Feng lowered her eyes and asked, Xiao Mo, do you know what spring water is that? Xiao Mo muttered to himself irresolutely for a long time before replying. If my guess isn't wrong, that should be spiritual water, spring water that is formed by spiritual energy. This spring water is better than the one Xiao Bai has at her home. Of course, the effects are also very overbearing, and if humans were to consume that spirit water, they will instantly explode and die. Hearing these words, young Luo Feng sighed. It seems like even if she were to obtain the spring water, it was of no use to her. However, seemingly recalling something, young Luo Feng looked at the queen hamster once again. Do you know where that spiritual spring is located? The queen hamster shook her head. I had unintentionally entered that place, and when I wanted to head there again, I discovered that I could not find it anymore. Chapter 706. Subduing the Hamster Tribe 1. Young Luo Feng knew what the queen hamster said was the truth. If she could find that spiritual spring, the hamster tribe would not be in such a state. Perhaps all the subjects could break through to be a god-level cultivator. Were there any repercussions after you drank the spiritual spring water that year? Young Luo Feng slightly narrowed her eyes and sized the queen hamster up and down, while a trace of understanding flashed across her eyes. The queen hamster stared blankly. How did you know? Because I am a physician. Young Luo Feng bewitchingly smiled. Ever since she saw the queen hamster, she had discovered some irregularities within her body. Now that she knew of the existence of the spiritual spring, she had verified her suspicions. Any spiritual item that had an overpowering effect would always cause some repercussion. The queen hamster spoke bitterly. The reproductive abilities of the hamster tribe are extremely powerful, but unfortunately, ever since I accidentally drank the spiritual spring water, I could no longer have children. Thus, I only have Meng Meng as my child. What if I can help you recover your ability to have children? Young Luo Feng slightly narrowed her eyes and spoke while seeming smiling yet not smiling. What? The queen hamster was pleasantly surprised as she stood up, while her voice carried a trace of trembling. Is what you're saying true? That's right. Young Luo Feng's fingertips lightly knocked the tabletop. I can help you recover your fertility, but at the same time, I have a request. Having said this, she paused for a moment before continuing. That request is, I want the hamster tribe to serve under me. The smile on the queen hamster face slowly disappeared and her eyes revealed that she was at a loss. Not being able to have more children was the most painful thing for her in her entire life. However, if she were to hand over the hamster tribe as such, how could she be accountable to these tribesmen? Follow me and I can guarantee that you will not need to hide in this world without daylight. Young Luo Feng slightly raised her head and the corner of her lips curved up. I can also let the hamster tribe no longer have to suffer the pain of not being able to increase their strength. The queen hamster's body trembled. With nothing that was incorrect, young Luo Feng's words had struck her heart. Looking at the changes in her expression, young Luo Feng continued speaking. Have you seen Milk Tea? He is also a god-level cultivator like you. If the hamster tribe swears allegiance to me, I can guarantee that all the members of the tribe will become god-level cultivators within several years. The queen hamster was stirred. Although she did not want to hand over the hamster tribe, but compared to the tribesmen being able to increase their strength, it was insignificant who the hamster tribe belonged to. After all, this gold-seeking hamster alongside this human indeed had the same strength as her. Alright, I'll promise you. The queen hamster made up her mind and bit on her lips. However, you have to promise me that you will let all the members of the hamster tribe reach god-level cultivation. Young Luo Feng smiled and revealed a confident smile, as if everything was in the palm of her hand. God-level cultivation is only a beginning. She had the confidence that she could let this group of gold-seeking hamsters become more powerful than god-level cultivator. Not knowing why, after seeing the arrogant confidence on the young lady's face, the queen hamster's heart gradually became resolute. She had enough of hiding underground, and since so, it would be much better if she placed all her bets on this young lady. I've heard from Meng Meng that you're leaving for the continent of no return. Within this forest of no return, the spiritual beasts here are not considered very strong, but if you were to go in further, there will be even more powerful spiritual beasts. Some of them have even above god-level cultivations. It's not safe for you to head there. The queen hamster stayed silent for a long time before continuing to speak. How about letting the tribesmen dig out a path heading towards the land of no return? Although the hamster tribe isn't considered strong on the surface, we are now underground and we are the rulers here. Chapter 707. Subduing the hamster tribe 2. Previously, young Luo Feng noticed due to Milk Tea, that a gold-seeking hamster's ability to dig a tunnel was very strong and fast. Coupled with the fact that the hamster tribe had an enormous number of tribesmen, it would not require a long time for a tunnel to reach the land of no return. Alright, at that time, all of you can leave here together with me. Young Luo Feng nodded her head, agreeing to the queen hamster's suggestion of them burrowing a pathway to the land of no return. The queen hamster touched her head. There are too many tribesmen of our hamster tribe, and if all of us were to leave together with you, I'm afraid we will cause a commotion in the land of no return. You don't have to worry about this. I have my own plans. However, before we leave, all the tribe members have to be contracted to me. I'm someone who is more prudent, and without the binding of the contract, I will not trust any spiritual beasts. During the time when the gold-seeking hamsters were digging a hole, all she had was time for the tribe members to initiate a contract with her one by one. Master, Xiao Mo's astonished voice transmitted from her soul. Do you intend to let the entire hamster tribe reside in the God Code world? Indeed, young Luo Feng nodded her head. Didn't you mention before that within the God Code world, other spiritual beasts can also enter? Plus, the spiritual energy in there is abundant and can help them in their cultivation. If not for this, young Luo Feng wouldn't have signed a contract with the hamster tribe members. Only an existing contract would allow her to let them enter the God Code world with ease. Xiao Mo stayed silent for a moment and then asked, Master, what if this hamster tribe consumes all the spiritual medicines in your God Code world? Young Luo Feng raised the corner of her lips. Now that the medicinal fields in the space have already increased by several times, I will allocate 1/5 of the space to plant medicinal herbs for feeding them. At that time, these gold-seeking hamsters will be supervised by you and you will distribute the medicinal herbs to them. The hamster tribe's size was tremendous, and their ability to reproduce was also powerful. If she were to control them, it could become a huge advantage for her. Master, the queen hamster walked to young Luo Feng and spoke respectfully. The hamster tribe has found numerous medicinal herbs all these years, and now that we are going to leave here I shall gift all these to you. Actually, by relying on the queen hamster's strength, they would definitely have a place for themselves if she were to head to the Long Xia continent. They would not have to be scared and on the edge here in the forest of no return. However, the number of precious medicinal herbs there was extremely low, and if they were to reside there, the hamster tribe would not be able to make any progress. For the hamster tribe's progress, she had chosen to take root in the forest of no return. Furthermore, she had often brought them out in search of medicinal herbs. Even as such, those medicinal herbs were only a drop in the ocean to the hamster tribe and were unable to raise their strength much. Let's go. Young Luo Feng followed behind the queen hamster and walked to their treasury. During all these years, the hamster tribe had indeed found numerous medicinal herbs, and it was all herbs that had grown for hundreds and thousands of years. If all these were to be planted in the God Code world, it would definitely allow the tribe's strength to increase by a huge margin. I shall accept these medicinal herbs. Young Luo Feng waved her hand and in an instant, countless herbs disappeared. The queen hamster looked at the young lady astonishingly, seemingly not understanding how the herbs disappeared into thin air. After you leave, you'd also need a place to stay. How about this? I shall too, accept this castle. Young Luo Feng furrowed her eyebrows and only relaxed them after a long time as she spoke. The queen hamster stared blankly. Master, this castle is extremely large and can't be moved. Furthermore, it's not quite convenient for us to bring this along. Chapter 708, Land of No Return 1. With the queen hamster's understanding, they would be unable to move such a huge castle even if there were to go all out. However, just as the hamster tribe had obeyed to young Luo Feng's command and uprooted the castle, the entire castle had disappeared when young Luo Feng waved her hands. It had truly disappeared, with only the huge pit to prove everything that happened earlier on. The queen hamster was shocked silly. All the tribesmen of the hamster tribe were dumbstruck. At this moment, a feeling arose in their hearts. Perhaps they would not regret following this human. She could make a castle to disappear with a wave of her hand, and how many people in this world could do such heaven-defying thing? Would someone who had such miraculous powers be a normal person? Young Luo Feng's eyes swept over the hamsters that were shocked silly. Remember, there's no need to fuss about anything regardless of what happens when you follow me. As long as you play your part, I will definitely give you a vast world. Her voice changed from its initial calmness to become passionate, from low to high while leading all the hamsters' emotions. The queen hamster's body trembled and her frame of mind followed along and surged. A vast world, wasn't that what they all wanted? From then on, they no longer had to hide in the dark underground and they could be the same as the other spirit beasts and roam around this world. Master, the hamster tribe will obediently follow your orders from today onward. The queen hamster's expression became respectful as her voice excitedly shouted. You can begin work. Young Luo Feng cast a glance at the densely packed gold-seeking hamsters and entered into a state of pondering. With the number of gold-seeking hamsters digging the tunnel, she would be able to arrive at the Land of No Return before long. Land of No Return, within a luxurious residence. A lady was standing before a table with her hands grasping a brush and eloquently writing on a paper. There was a creative concept for a painting and the handwriting on one side was upright, just like her personal character. Valiant and formidable looking, glowing with health and vigor. This lady had a heroic look and her hair was bound at her waist level. Her entire body in a gorgeous red robe had caused her to seem all the more full of mettle and capable of causing the downfall of a city or state. The room's door was pushed open, and at the same time the lady's brush had finished the last stroke on the paper. She gently flattened the painting and carefully raised it up. Within the painting was a small child that the red-robed lady was pulling along, and that little boy's expression was somewhat unfeeling, while his eyes were as black as the night, incomparably abstruse. Brother Yi. Looking at the man who walked into the room, the red-robed lady smiled. Her smile was like a blossoming flower that caused one's soul to be moved. What do you think of this painting of mine? How about we hang this in the bedroom? The man walked up and slightly smiled while holding the red-robed lady. His handsome face had a pampering smile. If you wish for it, then we'll do as you like. In addition, I came here because I have a good news for you. Brother Yi, you know what I want the most. What I want is to return to that continent. The red-robed lady shook her head as her heroic face contained worry. Unfortunately, those sage beasts guarding the forest of no return have yet to enter their slumber. During the period when they are still active, I am unable to return. The man became increasingly tender as he tightly embraced the red-robed lady's body. What I wanted to tell you was that Xiao has already embarked on the road to the land of no return. Our daughter-in-law has also accompanied him, and soon, you and your son will be reunited. Pa. The red-robed lady's hands loosened and the painted dropped. She did not even notice in the slightest when the ink on the painting smudged as her pair of almond-shaped eyes stared at the man. Chapter 709, Land of No Return 2. What did you just say? Xiao's here. He is here in the land of no return to look for me. That year when I went to the Long Xia continent, I helped someone there. Although that person's position within the continent isn't very powerful, at the very least, he has been reporting the situation about Xiao these few years to me via a sound transmitter. Just a while ago he had received news that Xiao and our daughter-in-law had left for the land of no return. The news that he has passed on has never been wrong. The red-robed lady retreated 2 steps and her hands tightly covered her lips while tears slowly streamed down from her eyes. That year when she left the Xiao family, she did not cry. When that woman sent someone to assassinate her, causing her to be seriously injured, she didn't cry. Even after coming to the land of no return and experiencing numerous dangers and torments, while she even had a narrow escape several times, she didn't even cry. But this time around, she had cried. Just like that time when Yuan Xiao had been chased out of the family, she had hugged him and cried bitterly. At that time she cried because she was too weak and was unable to protect her son. However, this time she had cried tears of joy. How many years has it been? How many years has she not seen him? And how many years of his growth did she miss out? All these years, he had suffered too many grievances and experienced numerous torments in order to have his achievements of today. Brother Yi, I want to look for them in the forest of no return. There were still streaks of tears on the red-robed lady's face, but her phoenix-like eyes were firm. There are many spiritual beasts in the forest of no return that loathe humans, especially those sage-level beasts. If it weren't for their existence, I would have gone back to the Long Xiao continent long ago, and I wouldn't have been unable to see him for over 10 years. The lady tightly bit her lips. That year, she had stepped into the forest of no return in order to look for Yuan Xiao but had been seriously injured by the attacks of those spiritual beasts. Only after coincidentally meeting with Yi Jingchen did she find out about the secret of the forest of no return. The reason why the forest of no return was dangerous was that there are several king spiritual beasts and their strength were comparable to a sage-level beast. However, these few beasts would enter a state of slumber every 10 years or so. That year, Yi Jingchen only went into the forest of no return when the sage-level spiritual beasts were in slumber that year. I'll accompany you. Yi Jingchen held onto the red-robed lady's waist as he gently spoke. This time around, it won't be just Xiao coming, but also our future daughter-in-law. I heard that our daughter-in-law is very capable and has caused a huge sensation in the Long Xiao continent. The red-robed lady raised her head and looked towards Yi Jingchen as she spoke. Thank you, Brother Yi. In the recent years, if it weren't for you, I would have long been dead. Yi Jingchen chuckled. Being able to meet you is my happiness throughout this life, so what's there to thank me for? The red-robed lady bitterly laughed. All these years, I haven't been able to give birth to a child for you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been chased out by the Yi family. Ever since she had been injured that year, she could no longer give birth, and even after seeking for famous physicians throughout, there was still no cure. This was also the biggest regret of her life. Having Xiao is sufficient. Your son is also my son, and I will treat him as my own child. Contrary to what she expected, Yi Jingchen refuted her words. Furthermore, we also have Moer and Kier. Although they were adopted by us, at the very least, they are very obedient, and this can be considered as making up for the loss. How would she not know that Yi Jingchen was consoling her? However, the more he consoled her, the more her heart sank. Chapter 710. Land of No Return 3. Brother Yi. Alright, let's not discuss this anymore. I heard from that person in the Long Xia continent that Xiao and Fenger had already left for a period of time. Perhaps they might have already reached the land of no return. How about this? When the time comes, we will take the risk and travel into the forest of no return while sending Moer to scout for their news at other places. Yi Jingchen slightly smiled. That son and daughter-in-law of ours are individuals who cause trouble easily, and if they have truly arrived in the land of no return, their news will be spread into Moer's ears very soon. I'll have him be mindful of this. The red-robed lady was speechless. Individuals who cause trouble easily. Would there be someone like you who describes their son and daughter-in-law as such? The red-robed lady was somewhat nervous. So many years has passed, do you think Xiao will still acknowledge me as his mother? In any case, this is also the first meeting with my future daughter-in-law. Should I prepare some gifts? Will she like me as her mother-in-law? This time, it was Yi Jingchen who was speechless. He had only heard before about a daughter-in-law being nervous when meeting their mother-in-law, but he had never seen a mother-in-law nervous to such an extent. He wanted to ask, where did the strength you had when you charged and broke through the enemy lines go to? What about the courage you had while tearing apart your enemies? He understood that his own woman's personality was as such. She would be vicious and merciless in the face of enemies while softening in front of family members. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been willing to suffer grievances in the Yi family all these years. Thinking back to the attitude those people from Yi family had towards her, Yi Jingchen couldn't help but release a sigh and tightly held her. After finding Xiao, let's have the whole family stay outside and never return to a place like the Yi family. I will never let you suffer any unfair treatment anymore. Yi Jingchen's expression contained resolution. Even if you are unable to give birth, it's sufficient that we have Xiao. He had never cared about whether she could have a baby or not, and he only cared if she could stay beside him eternally. If the Yi family was unable to accommodate her, then he would not return to that place for the rest of his life. Brother Yi, the red-robed lady felt touched in her heart. She understood that this man had abandoned everything for her. So much so that he had given up the position as the Yi family's heir, just to be beside her. Foster father, foster mother, you were looking for me. Suddenly a clear and bright voice could be heard from the entrance and instantly attracted the attention of two of them who were sharing an intimate moment. There was an unusually handsome man leaning against the door frame with both hands holding onto his sword. His legs were crossed, and the corner of his lips had a curve that radiated his dashing aura. His sharp eyebrows pointed to his temples, while his eyes were like the stars and a head full of ink-like black hair slightly flew in the breeze. His entire being was full of vitality and heroic spirit. Moer, you came just in time. Yi Jingchen's eyebrows relaxed, and he said while slightly smiling, I have a task for you right now. I reckon that your little brother and his wife have already come to the land of no return, so I want you to immediately head out and search for them. If you manage to locate them, inform your foster mother and me via sound transmission. The man raised his sword-like brows and stood up straight. I've also wanted to see my little brother and his wife too. Foster father, you can rest assured and leave this task to me. If I am able to locate them, I will definitely bring them back safe and sound. Yi Jingchen's eyes contained a smile within. With you handling things, I will definitely be at ease. After accepting the task, Yi Eximo left the study room. However, before he managed to walk more than a few steps, a petite figure blocked his path. Big brother, what matters did foster father find you for? Yi Qi blinked her eyes and her curious appearance looked particularly simple and naive, causing others to feel like cherishing her. However, without knowing why, Yi Eximo never had any good feelings towards this foster sister of his. Chapter 711. Passing by each other 1. Even he did not know why he disliked her so much, to the extent of loathing her. Yi Eximo knitted his eyebrows and looked at Yi Qi. Foster mother's real son has arrived at the land of no return. I have been tasked by foster father to look for them. I'd like to go too. Yi Qi pouted and looked at Yi Eximo pitifully. Big brother, could you bring me along? No, Yi Eximo ruthlessly rejected her, without even a possibility to refute. But, Yi Qi tightly bit on her lips. She truly did not understand why this big brother of hers who had always cherished women would be so unexpectedly heartless towards her. There's no buts. Since foster father did not let you go, then you had better stay here and not cause trouble for me. Yi Qi stared blankly. She had wanted to say something more, but Yi Eximo had already walked outside of the courtyard, leaving her alone there. Forest of no return. Under the vast and limitless skies, a huge hole suddenly opened in the ground. Shortly after that, a handsome and unfeeling man holding a young lady leapt out from underground. There was no dirt on their bodies and their clothing was just as clean and unsoiled as it was before they went underground. Yeah. Just when the two of them intended to continue heading out, a fine horse was rushing towards them at a high speed that caused a cloud of dust to fly around. Hearing the sound of horse hooves, Yuan Xiao was afraid that Yun Luo Feng would be hit, so he hastily protected her in his embrace before looking towards them. Atop the fine horse, a green-robed man with a handsome appearance was riding on the horse and galloping quickly forward. Behind his back there was a lady in red tightly holding onto his waist. A gale wind blew past her, with her fine black hair flying upward, looking heroic and formidable. Young Luo Feng glanced at the steed that they were riding on and a flash of understanding flashed past her eyes. Scarlet Blood 1,000 miles horse. It is said that this horse's speed is very fast and can travel 1,000 miles within 2 hours, far surpassing the speed of flying up high in the skies. The 1,000-mile horse brushed past them and headed towards the forest of no return. Brother Yi, wait a moment. All of a sudden, the red-robed lady seemed to have discovered something and hastily spoke. Whoa. Yi Jingchen hastily tightened the reins and looked at the red-robed lady in astonishment. What's wrong? The red-robed lady did not speak but instead, leapt down from the horse and headed towards Yun Luofeng and Yuan Xiao. Yuan Xiao tightly protected Yun Luofeng, and his gaze contained a trace of caution. Excuse me, may I know both your names? The red-robed lady smiled and asked. Hearing this question, Yun Luofeng and Yuan Xiao glanced at each other while their expression became increasingly vigilant. These two seemed very strong, and why did they suddenly inquire about their names? Regardless of anything, she would never reveal her real name. After all, she had offended too many people these past few years, and who knew if these two people were related to the Long Xia continent? Thinking of this, Yun Luofeng was silent for a long time before she replied. Lin Ruobai. Not far away from the general's estate, Lin Ruobai sneezed and rubbed her nose while she suspiciously questioned, "Who's talking about me behind my back? Could it be that master sensed that I was goofing off? That won't do, I must practice without delay." After saying this, Lin Ruobai hastily sat straight and flipped the book that Yun Luofeng left behind for her. Within the forest, the red-robed lady heard Yun Luofeng's answer and looked distracted for a moment as her long-shaped eyebrows slightly wrinkled. Could it be that she had sensed wrongly and they were not who she was looking for? Then what about this young master? She turned toward Yuan Xiao, seemingly not willing to give up. Chapter 712. Passing by each other too. Yuan Xiao's expression was grim as he kept silent, not even sparing a glance at the red-robed lady, as if not noticing her existence. My man doesn't like to speak, Yun Luofeng lightly smiled, his name is Yun Mo. Within the God Code world, Xiao Mo pouted. Why couldn't my master fabricate another name casually? Why did she insist on using my name? Let's go. Yi Jingchen pulled on the red-robed lady's clothing and spoke, they're not the ones we're looking for. All right. The red-robed lady nodded and spoke apologetically, my apologies, I had mistaken you for another person earlier on. Brother Yi, let's continue setting off. She slowly turned and her eyes revealed a trace of disappointment. Within this forest of no return, not many would be here. When she saw these two young people, it was inevitable that she had mistaken them as her own son and daughter-in-law. Now it seemed that she had recognized the wrong people. Yeah. After mounting the horse, Yi Jingchen allowed the red-robed lady to hug his waist before waving the long whip and immediately rushed into the forest of no return. At the same time, Yun Luofeng and Yuan Xiao turned, intending to leave. At this moment, the four of them did not anticipate that their next meeting would be a long time later because of this missed opportunity. Yun Luofeng did not even think that the red-robed lady before her was the person they had searched strenuously for. Passing through the forest of no return meant that they've arrived in the land of no return. At this moment, within a city not far from the forest of no return, young Luo Feng was sitting in a tea house while looking out. It's been almost an hour. Why hasn't Yun Xiao returned yet? When they entered this bustling city earlier on, they were notified that many inns were fully booked. To prevent young Luo Feng from straining herself, Yun Xiao had asked her to wait for him in the tea house while he went to search if there were any inns with empty rooms. It had been an hour since he left, and young Luo Feng had also been waiting here for an hour. Suddenly, a familiar figure outside the window reflected in her eyes, causing her to stand up instantly and casually throw a silver while she hastily went out. Long Fei, it's been a long time. I didn't expect to meet you here. On the main street, Long Fei was absent-mindedly walking among the crowd when he heard a voice before him and was startled. Lifting his head, his eyes met with another pair of eyes that seemed to be smiling yet not smiling. My Lord, Long Fei stared blankly and spoke somewhat without confidence, why are you here? Young Luo Feng raised the corner of her lips. When I returned from Wangquan City, I had been informed that you had already left the general's estate. I didn't expect to meet you here. Right now, do you have any words you would like to say to me? Looking at the figure that was closing in, Long Fei subconsciously retreated 2 steps back. I came here because of some matters and was originally going to return to the Longyuan kingdom after settling my affairs. I didn't expect you would have chased me here that quickly. In Long Fei's opinion, this woman must have chased him here because she wanted him to fulfill his promise. Long Fei, young Luo Feng slightly narrowed her eyes, I am very curious about something right now. What is it? You are incapable of passing through the forest of no return with your ability. I would like to know, how did you shuttle back and forth between these 2 continents? Young Luo Feng smiled bewitchingly and looked at Long Fei. Long Fei spoke while having a guilty conscience, because there's a king spiritual beast in this forest of no return that is indebted to my master. Thus, I was able to shuttle back and forth freely. Chapter 713, Passing by each other 3. Is that so? Young Luo Feng had a faint smile. Yes, that's how I shuttled back and forth. Long Fei wiped the imaginary sweat from his head and weakly replied. For the time being, I will not ask you about this, but let me ask you something else. Who is your master? She recalled that Long Fei went looking for the Tian family previously, to vent anger for his master. However, if his master was from the land of no return, their strength would certainly be above the Tian family. Yet, why didn't she personally take revenge? My master doesn't allow me to reveal her name. Such a joke. How could he tell her that his own master was the person Tianya had been searching for? Once she knew about this, Tianya would know his master's whereabouts. At that time, if his master meets Tianya and insists on leaving with him, those people will definitely never let his master off. Therefore, he absolutely couldn't reveal who his master is. He wouldn't reveal it even if he was beaten to death. You're really unwilling to reveal your master's name? Young Luo Feng quirked her lips and asked. I'm not saying. Long Fei tightly shut his mouth and had a look of not being afraid of dying. All right then, I won't continue asking. What did she mean? Based on a normal person's personality, wouldn't they try to get to the heart of the matter when in the face of such a situation? Then why did she not continue asking? My lord, are you really not going to pursue this? Long Fei asked while being at a loss. Young Luo Feng's eyebrow lifted. You wish for me to investigate? In that case, you can tell me who exactly is your master right now. If you do not reveal it, I will hang you up and whip you. Then it's better if you don't ask. Only right up to the present, Long Fei understood that it was better for him to speak lesser. Otherwise, he would never know when he would provoke her. All of a sudden, an unusual gust of wind blew from young Luo Feng's back. Seeing that her undergarments were about to be exposed by the wind, she hastily held onto her robe while an evil glimmer flashed through her pitch-black eyes. Tisk tisk, it's such a pity. I was just about to see it. A voice that had ample vitality could be heard behind young Luo Feng while carrying traces of regret. Your reactions are very nimble, otherwise I would have succeeded. Young Luo Feng's expression turned black. Of course, Long Fei's expression was even darker than hers. Not even waiting for young Luo Feng to take action, he had angrily shouted. Martial uncle, do you still have the slightest sense of shame to be always acting so vulgar? Even if you don't want your face, I still want mine. If you continue as such, I will return and report to my master. Martial uncle. Young Luo Feng's expression once again darkened. Long Fei, he's your martial uncle. I don't wish to admit it, Long Fei snorted. If it's possible, I hope that I'll never be acquainted with this type of vulgar man in my entire life. Bastard. The middle-aged man slapped Long Fei on his head in a rage, while his eyes were opened wide and glaring at him. Do you still know how to respect your elders? At least I am still your martial uncle. Is this the way you should speak to your martial uncle? Respect my elders. Are you worth my respect? Long Fei snorted. Take a look at what you're doing every day. You're always peeping at other women's undergarments or stealing the next door widow's undergarments. You aren't even willing to stop when other families' children are bathing. What's more hateful is that such a vulgar person like you is my martial uncle. Exactly how many lifetimes of evil have I committed? Seemingly sensing the attention cast towards them from the streets, the middle-aged man also felt somewhat embarrassed. He wished that he could find an underground hole and squeeze inside. After fiercely staring at Long Fei, the middle-aged man turned towards young Luo Feng. Lend me your dress to hide. Towards this, young Luo Feng only said a single word. Scram. Chapter 714. Long Fei's Master 1. Long Fei raised his hand and supported his forehead. He truly did not wish to acknowledge this rotten bastard with immoral behavior. Martial uncle, she's the one I told you about before who had helped me previously. Looking at the middle-aged man with a wretched appearance across his whole face, the corner of Long Fei lips slightly raised up. Her name is young Luo Feng. Cough cough, the middle-aged man dryly coughed twice and recovered his deadpan expression. So it turns out, you're the person Xiao Fei had mentioned before. It's an honor to meet you at last. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid Xiao Fei wouldn't have been able to return safe and sound. Long Fei looked at the middle-aged man and turned towards young Luo Feng. This is my martial uncle named Su Zheng, a well-known rotten bastard. Xiao Fei, how can you say that? The middle-aged man purposely contained his expressionless face while blowing on his beard and spoke, it's in my nature to love beautiful women. Furthermore, I have only behaved flirtatiously and have never forced an honest girl into prostitution, neither have I raped any women. In actual fact, I consider myself to be an upright gentleman. Behaved flirtatiously. To think you feel no shame to have said this out loud. You've already acted as such and you still had the nerve to call yourself an upright gentleman. Long Fei was speechless. His own martial uncle's skin was already thick to such an extent that no one in the entire continent could compare. Just then, young Luo Feng glanced at Yun Xiao who was walking towards her from ahead, and the corner of her lips curved up. Yun Xiao. Yun Xiao slowly walked to young Luo Feng's side and raised his hands to gently sweep away the fallen leaves on the strands of her hair, while his black eyes revealed gentleness. Why did you come out? Didn't I let you wait for me in the tea house? I don't feel reassured for your safety out here on the streets. Young Luo Feng faintly smiled. I bumped to an acquaintance, so I came out. Oh right, have you found an inn? From the beginning, Yun Xiao did not spare a glance at Long Fei who was standing beside young Luo Feng. His pitch-black eyes only reflected the young lady's figure. Hold it. Suddenly, an angry voice rushed over from Yun Xiao's back and without even a moment later, a crowd rushed from the back and encircled them in the middle. Yun Xiao's gaze became increasingly grim as he coldly swept a glance towards everyone who encircled them. The group separated, and in an instant, a young lady in green robes strolled in. Her long hair lightly floated, looking luminous and elegant. Miss, he was the one who smashed the stone earlier on. There was even a servant girl alongside the young lady and her servant's hands pointed towards Yun Xiao as she spoke. Stone. Young Luo Feng raised her eyebrow and turned towards Yun Xiao to question. Yun Xiao, what's going on? Just now when I was walking on the street, a stone dropped from a guest house on the side. Afterward, I broke it into pieces. The man's words were simple as always and had explained the whole situation in a few words. Young Luo Feng slightly narrowed her eyes and looked at the luminous and elegant young lady with her head slanted to one side. You threw a stone at random and scared my man. Therefore, you were aware that you had committed a mistake, so you came here to apologize. Long Fei's expression stiffened. He originally thought that his martial uncle was sufficiently shameless, but he had never expected that there was someone even more shameless than him. These people clearly came to condemn them for their mistake, but it had become an apology in her mouth. Liuer. Seeing that the furious servant girl had wanted to say something, the luminous and elegant young lady slightly raised her hands and stopped her. Her gaze looked straight at young Luo Feng and Yun Xiao as she spoke indifferently. Since this young master has destroyed my stone, it can be considered that we are brought together by fate. My name is Lin Ruoxin. May I know if the two of you are willing to reveal your names? Chapter 715. Long Phase Master 2. Young Luo Feng raised her brows. If you want to offer an apology, then I shall accept it. But if you want to know our names, then please forgive me as I have nothing to tell you. After saying this, young Luo Feng turned and left. As for Yun Xiao, he had never looked this group of people in the eyes all along. Miss. The servant girl angrily stomped her foot. Are you letting them off just like that? What else could I have done? Lin Ruoxin's eyebrows slightly furrowed. Since this stone is known as a marriage stone, then it proves that the person it smashes is my future husband. Unfortunately, it had been smashed by him. But even if that's the case, the person that the marriage stone was looking for was him. Miss, I cannot sense any aura from that man. Perhaps he's not worthy of you. The marriage stone will only react towards my destined person. Since the stone chose him, it definitely has its reason. However, I need to observe more to see if this man is worthy of me. When Lin Ruoxin said that, she revealed an air of arrogance. As the daughter of the city lord of Spirit City, she naturally had the right to be arrogant. The person that was worthy of her was bound to be a giant among men. But miss, it seems like that man already has a wife, the servant maid weakly said. Those two seemed extremely close and definitely had the relation of a husband and wife. If miss wanted to obtain that man, she was afraid that it wouldn't be that easy. Lin Ruoxin faintly smiled. This is not within the scope of my consideration. I will only think about whether this man has the strength to be worthy of me and other things do not matter. She had the confidence that as long as it was a man she fancies, they were unable to escape from her palms. Let's go, we shall return to the city lord's estate. In addition, this matter cannot be known by my father. I understand, miss. After the two of them turned and left, two silhouettes gradually walked out from the restaurant onto the noisy streets. Master, a red-clothed lady slightly smiled and lowered her head to look at the young child beside her. I acted in accordance with your command and got in contact with Lin Ruoxin. Furthermore, I sold the marriage stone to her. Yun Xiao's aura had been infused in this marriage stone by Jinyu, and as long as Yun Xiao was in this location, the marriage stone would locate him. It was such a joke that Lin Ruoxin had truly believed in her words and thought that the marriage stone could find her destined man. Destined. Chuckle. In this world, there's no such a thing as destined. Bai Su lightly nodded. I am still unable to take action against them at this moment, but I will not let them live too peacefully. However, this Lin Ruoxin wouldn't be much of a disturbance between them, and we still have to rely on Yun Xiao's mother to deal with them. Even if Yun Xiao's mother loves her son dearly, a daughter-in-law that she has never been in contact with before will at most be an acquaintance and cannot be considered a close family member. If he could make use of the foster daughter alongside Yun Xiao's mother, perhaps he could separate them. Facing a daughter-in-law that she had never met and a foster daughter she raised up, no one would be unaware of who was more important. Yes, master, Jinyu respectfully spoke. She would never reject Bai Su's requests. Even if he wanted her to commit suicide by cutting her throat, she would lift her sword without the slightest hesitation. Bai Su did not say anything else. He waved his robes while turning and walking in the direction to head outside of the city gates. At an inn. Young Luo Feng looked at the two people who had followed her and her eyebrows slightly raised. What's wrong? Is there anything else? Chapter 716. Long Phase Master 3. My lord, there's something I've never told you. Long Fei entered the room and asked, do you know why there are so many people in Spirit City recently? I am not interested. The young lady's answer caused Long Fei's expression to stiffen as he spoke plaintively. My lord, something has happened in the Forest of No Return. Forest of No Return? I just came from that place, so why am I unaware that something has happened there? This. Long Fei looked at the middle-aged man and ultimately made a firm resolution as he faced young Luo Feng to speak. Have you heard that there are numerous treasures coming into being in the Forest of No Return? So the Spirit City's lord has gathered countless experts and intends to attack into the Forest of No Return. Young Luo Feng paused for a moment before replying, attacking the Forest of No Return. They shouldn't have the ability to do so. Long Fei bitterly smiled. Actually, the real situation isn't as what they have been told. The Spirit City Lord deceived them and there are absolutely no treasures appearing in the Forest of No Return. He just wants to gather a crowd of men to be his cannon fodder. Cannon fodder? Indeed, a mishap has happened in the Forest of No Return and all the King's spirit beasts have been sealed up. I don't know where the Spirit City Lord heard this news, but he wants to take advantage of that fact to conquer the Forest of No Return since the King's spirit beasts are unable to battle against them. Conquer the entire Forest of No Return. This Spirit City Lord indeed has a huge ambition. He doesn't have the ability to do so. Young Luo Feng raised the teacup before her while lightly taking a sip and said while faintly smiling. My lord. Plop. Long Fei knelt before young Luo Feng on one knee and raised his head to look straight at the stunning young lady before him. I have some friendly relations with those spirit beasts within the Forest of No Return, and I do not wish for them to meet with capture and massacre. I would like to ask for your help. Give me a reason to help you. Reason. Long Fei was in a dilemma. Could it be that I truly have to tell her about that matter? Martial uncle. Long Fei impatiently looked at the middle-aged man. Although his martial uncle was usually unreliable, there were still some matters that required him to make a decision. Let her know. The middle-aged man released a sigh. Your master has been through much toil these few years. If it weren't for those obstinate people, she wouldn't have had suffered so much. Long Fei bitterly smiled. He didn't expect that ultimately he still had to reveal his master's name to persuade her. Long Fei helplessly spoke, My lord, didn't you want to know how I had smoothly traveled across the Forest of No Return? It's because my master is one of the King's spirit beasts within the Forest of No Return. Young Luo Feng's eyes slightly narrowed. Your master is a spirit beast. Not only that, my master is also the person that Tianya has been searching for. Crash. Young Luo Feng suddenly stood up from her chair and her hand accidentally toppled the teacup. The boiling hot tea had splashed on her hands, but she did not even sense it. Yun Xiao's brows lightly furrowed and he took out a handkerchief to wipe the tea on the young lady's hands. Looking at the back of her hands that had been scalded, a trace of heartache gradually gushed forth within his unfeeling gaze. Long Fei, you're speaking the truth. Young Luo Feng no longer cared about other things as her black eyes stared towards Long Fei. She indeed did not want to meddle in others' business, but if that person was Tianya's woman, then it was a different thing altogether. Regardless of anything, she could not allow Tianya's woman to receive any sort of harm. That year, my master did not care about others' obstruction and insisted on being together with Tianya. But she never expected that such a misunderstanding would arise. Chapter 717, Long Fei's Master 4. She has an unyielding personality and fiery temper. In addition, she became muddle-headed when she was angry and did not even realize that it was a conspiracy. She left Tianya in a fit of anger and returned to the Forest of No Return. Ever since she returned, she was unable to leave that place as the other King's spirit beasts would absolutely never let her go. I did not inform you of the truth because if Tianya were to meet with my master, she would definitely leave with him without regard for anything else. At that time, she would offend the other king beasts. Long Fei looked at Yun Luofeng and continued speaking. If that's the case, not only Tianya, even my master will be implicated. Yun Luofeng fingers lightly kneaded her jaw as her gaze shot towards the middle-aged man. I heard that the king spirit beasts in the Forest of No Return are all in the sage-level realm. If he is your master's junior brother, then he must also be a king spirit beast. Why do I sense that he has yet to break through as a sage-level beast? Long Fei wanted to explain but was interrupted by the middle-aged man beside him. Sage-level beast. That all changed starting several years ago. Over these last few years, all the sage-level beasts in our forest have all disappeared. While I and my senior sister are the king spirit beasts of this new generation, and we're not as powerful. However, this is a secret of our Forest of No Return, and humans are unaware. Indeed, if humans had found out about the disappearance of the sage-level spirit beasts, there would not be a peaceful day in the Forest of No Return. My lord, my master is my benefactor. A few years back when I was carrying out an assassination, I was seriously injured and accidentally barged into the Forest of No Return. It was my master who saved me and insisted on letting me stay despite others' objections. I will absolutely never let her be exposed to any danger, so I would like to request for your help. I'm willing to work hard for you for the rest of my life. Long Fei fiercely kowtowed with his head banging on the ground as he spoke while clenching his teeth and bearing the pain. If his master could be saved, not to even mention about working hard for the rest of his life, he would be willing even if she asked him to go to the underworld. When are they leaving? Young Luo Feng took a deep breath. Since Long Fei's master was Tian Ya's woman, then it was impossible for her to ignore this. Long Fei felt joy in his heart, and he stood up from the ground to speak. I heard that 3 days from now the city lord of Spirit City will begin setting off for the forest of no return. We should infiltrate this group. Go make preparations and we will set off 3 days later. Young Luo Feng slowly sat down and her body lazily leaned against the chair while she slightly raised her brow. However, I can only give my utmost, but I can't guarantee that I'll be able to help you save them. My lord, I have faith in you, Long Fei spoke with a big smile on his face. Everyone in the Longyuan kingdom refers to you as a pervert, and there's nothing in this world that you cannot accomplish. Pervert. Young Luo Feng rubbed her forehead and turned to look at Yun Xiao behind her. People from the Longyuan kingdom truly refer to me as such. Yun Xiao was silent for a long time. You're a devil, not a pervert. A devil that bewitches others' hearts. Young Luo Feng raised her hand and squeezed Yun Xiao's handsome face while the smile on her face was bewitchingly attractive. I've always thought that you were the one that allures women. Gazing at these two people who were bantering flirtatiously, Long Fei's expression was somewhat embarrassed. Martial uncle, I feel that we should head out. Head out? Why? The middle-aged man opened his eyes wide and asked, not understanding why. Blockhead. Long Fei silently scolded him. Could it be that he wasn't aware that they were the third wheel in this situation? Martial uncle, I'll bring you to visit the brothels. Stop looking for trouble here. Long Fei pulled on the middle-aged man and left. Chapter 718, How is he a hypocrite? 1. Brothel. His eyes brightened as he hastily followed Long Fei and left. At least you're tactful and know how to show filial respect to your martial uncle. I heard that there is a brothel in the Spirit City where the ladies are very beautiful. Let's go, I'll bring you there immediately. City Lord's estate. Within the luxurious study room, Lin Yuan's hands lightly caressed the painting on the table while his gaze was extremely gentle. The lady in the painting was dressed in green and had an ethereal beauty. Her hands held a jade flute, and she attractively sat at the foot of a tree with a smile on her face. Her smile was just like a warm sun that gradually covered her surroundings in this dry and dull land, forming an exceptionally beautiful scene. Fu Sheng. Lin Yuan bent down and his tongue lightly licked the painting. His expression revealed pleasure as he softly muttered, regardless of whether you are human or a spirit beast, I will have you. Even if I have to burn down your entire forest of no return with a torch. If it was in the past, he wouldn't even dare to think of doing such a thing. However, not long ago he had obtained a piece of news. The king's spirit beasts in the forest of no return had all been sealed. Wasn't this because the heavens had seen that he yearned for her so many years and gave him this opportunity? Father. From outside the door, a cold voice could be heard, scaring Lin Yuan as he hastily hid the painting and dryly coughed before he replied, Enter. The door of the room was slowly pushed open. Covered in sunlight, the young lady slowly walked in and her full thick hair flew in the breeze. Her expression was cold and her clear and elegant complexion slightly glowed in the sunlight. Ruoxin, you're back. Lin Yuan no longer had the wretched look of before as he spoke with a serious expression. There are 3 more days until the day we set off into the forest of no return. At that time, you had better be prepared. Furthermore, there will be plenty of young and talented men among the experts I've gathered and you can find someone to get married to among them. Lin Ruoxin slightly paused. At that moment, an unfeeling expression appeared in her mind. Father, I think I already have a candidate for my future husband. Oh, Lin Yuan looked at Lin Ruoxin, and who is that man? Did you bring him here for me to meet? Lin Ruoxin shook her head. I'm still observing him. Once he passes my inspection I will immediately get married to him. Hearing this, Lin Yuan did not say anything else. He had always trusted his daughter's foresight. Since that's the case, then you can make your own decision. You can leave first. Lin Yuan waved his hands and spoke indifferently. Yes. Lin Ruoxin bowed and retreated from the study room. The moment she left, her heart relaxed little by little. Earlier on, she was truly afraid that her father would interrogate her about that person. If that happened, her father would definitely send men out to investigate him, and that would disrupt her plans. Lin Ruoxin thought that Lin Yuan truly felt reassured by her, so he did not interrogate any further. What she didn't know was that the other party merely wanted her to leave quickly. The moment Lin Ruoxin had closed the study room door, Lin Yuan took out that painting once again and extended his disgusting tongue to lick it from top to bottom. His expression was just like he was licking a genuine person. Especially since when he was lightly licking the woman in the painting, he produced a lewd moaning sound. 3 days later, it was the day when experts within Spirit City set off for the Forest of No Return. In the early morning, the entire city gates had been surrounded. By the time Yun Luo Feng and the rest arrived, there was already an impenetrable crowd. Everyone. Lin Yuan raised his hand, and instantly the noise around the city gates quieted down. He cleared his throat and continued speaking. Presumably everyone is already aware that the location we are heading to this time around is the Forest of No Return. It's considered a place of riches and honor among the dangers. Even if there are dangers during this trip, if you are able to come out alive, your strength will definitely have a substantial change. Chapter 719. How is he a hypocrite? 2. However, Lin Yuan paused for a moment. I've already heard that the King Spirit beasts within the Forest of No Return are unable to appear in battle with us. We only have to deal with the other spirit beasts. As such, the mission this time around is not as arduous and difficult as you think. Wah! The crowd was suddenly in an uproar. Lin Yuan's words were like a stone that shot into a tranquil lake, resulting in great waves. City Lord, there's something that I don't understand. Since the mission this time isn't dangerous, why have you asked us to head out with you? Lin Yuan smiled and spoke magnanimously. I, Lin Yuan, have never been the type of person that monopolizes treasures. Since treasures have appeared within the Forest of No Return, then I have to share them with everyone. This is my usual standard of conduct. Everyone looked grateful, and some people's expression even contained respect. The City Lord's personal character has always been honorable. I've never seen someone with a character better than his in my entire life. If it was someone else, they would definitely monopolize the treasures. Only the City Lord is willing to take it out and share it with us. Long live the City Lord! Resounding voices erupted from outside of the city gates. With no grounds for criticism, Lin Yuan had caused everyone to believe in him without a doubt through these few words. Hypocrite! Long Fei snorted and spoke with sarcasm. His voice was extremely low, and coupled with the fact that his voice had been suppressed by the other high-spirited voices, no one had noticed his existence. Lin Yuan once again raised his hands to stop everyone as he spoke indifferently. Also, I am not entering the Forest of No Return for the treasures. I am merely bringing along my daughter to learn through real-life experience. As such, I will not take any treasures within the Forest of No Return, and everything will be collected by you. His words were received by the crowd and once again caused a huge sensation. There were even some people who were so touched that they shed tears. They had never seen anyone who was more selfless than Lin Yuan in their whole life. If he wasn't a person of noble character, then who was worthy of that title? Looking at these deeply grateful expressions, Lin Yuan internally sneered. A bunch of idiots. How would he know where are the treasures located in the Forest of No Return? He was entering the forest merely to look for that woman. It was a joke that these people were being treated like cannon fodder, but thankful to him. However, there are exceptions to everything. Lin Yuan suddenly discovered a group of people who were not moved by his words but had instead stood rooted on the ground in disapproval. Not knowing if it was his misconception, but was that actually disdain in these people's faces. Cough cough. Lin Yuan dryly coughed and his stern gaze directly looked at Yun Luo Feng and the rest as he questioned with indifference, may I know if the four of you have any thoughts? Within the four people, there was a middle-aged man while the others were very young. The most dazzling ones were the man and woman standing in the front. Looking at the young lady's white robes and magnificent style unmatched in this generation, she lazily leaned on the city walls while her pitch-black eyes were full of smiling intent. The black-robed man standing beside her had a grim expressionless look as if his face was paralyzed. It was as though there was nothing that would cause his expression to change. He was just like a god that quietly kept watch beside the young lady while remaining unmoved. Who are these people? Who invited them here? Within the crowd, a discontented voice suddenly sounded. The City Lord has sacrificed so much for us and these people aren't even expressing their thanks. Their shameless character is exactly opposite to the City Lord's honorable character. Chapter 720. How is he a hypocrite? 3. Indeed, I do not expect them to be as noble as the City Lord, but at least they should express their gratitude when the City Lord has sacrificed this much. But what is with their attitude? Not only did they not express gratitude, they even ignored the city lord's questioning. Each and every one said one sentence, sufficiently displaying their disdain towards young Luo Feng and the rest. Long Fei was angered to the point his internal organs were trembling. His eyes coldly swept across the crowd that was hooting and carved each and every one of their appearances into his brain. He would let them suffer when they arrived in the forest of no return. That's right, under the masses' angry voices, young Luo Feng finally spoke. I am not as honorable as the city lord because I will not hold a woman's portrait and have a sexual fantasy about her. Lin Yuan stared blankly and his eyes revealed that he was flustered. She knows. How did she know? Regarding this matter, even his daughter was unaware, so how did this woman know and who exactly is she? Long Fei looked towards young Luo Feng with a puzzled look and his gaze revealed confusion. Miss. Lin Yuan's expression turned solemn. I do not know what grudge you have against me that would cause you to slander me this way. Everyone is aware that I, Lin Yuan, am faithful to my wife and I have never even taken a concubine. You actually say that I have a sexual fantasy involving a painting. Not taking in concubines doesn't mean that you don't have a woman outside your house. Lin Yuan's expression once changed again. Miss, you have to bear responsibility for the words you speak. I'll believe that you are young and ignorant and not argue with you. However, you had better have some evidence the next time you speak. The crowd that was silent earlier on had once again intensely criticized her when Lin Yuan and young Luo Feng were arguing with each other. Those people were extremely angry with her. In their mind, Lin Yuan was the most honorable person, yet this woman dared to accuse him. How could they tolerate it? Miss, the city lord has a good temper and did not bother to argue with you. But if it was us, we would have long sent you flying with a slap. If you are unable to learn from the city lord's righteousness, then you should learn from Miss Ruoxan's tranquil and calm personality. The way you speak is excessively immoral. If all the women on earth were the same as Miss Ruoxan, then all man would be blessed. Unfortunately, there are some people who can't compare to even a strand of her hair. Slap. Before this young man finished speaking, he felt a palm strike fiercely landing on his face that caused him to feel dizzy and his eyes to dim. He then angrily spoke, "Who was it? Who hit me earlier on?" Silence. The entire city gate area was unusually quiet. The young man angrily grabbed the lapels of the man beside him and snarled, "Speak, was it you who hit me earlier on?" Are you crazy? That person pushed the young man away and rearranged his lapels while spitting out a word, "Nut job." Slap. Another slap fiercely flung down, directly making this young man's figure fly out. Looking at this scene, everyone sucked in a cold breath. Did we actually encounter a ghost? The young man got up from the ground and he no longer had the mind to continue scolding. His complexion turned pale and then green, while his eyes contained fear and his body couldn't help but tremble. Nothing was more fearful than an undetectable enemy. All right. Lin Yuan slightly furrowed his brows and looked towards the young man while speaking, "Are there any problems with your body? I think that you pulled a tendon, resulting in a cramp. Coincidentally, I have a physician in my estate. It's better that you withdraw from this trip and recuperate at my place." That young man was clearly shocked silly. Was it a cramp? But he clearly felt that he had been slapped by someone. Chapter 721. How is he a hypocrite? 4. The others had instead disregarded this young man, and their eyes were filled with a sudden realization. So it turned out to be just a cramp. Like I said, how could he be slapped by someone else? I clearly didn't see anyone there. The city lord is truly kind, and actually provided the physician in his estate to treat him. It's my first time seeing such a kind and powerful expert. The gaze of everyone that looked towards the city lord was filled with respect, and his position in their hearts increased a little. Young Luo Feng looked at the man standing beside her. Although others did not see, she had clearly noticed that it was Yun Xiao who took action earlier on. Thinking of this, her lips curved and she smiled. Yun Xiao, have you come up with a name for the move you executed earlier? No, Yun Xiao honestly replied. Young Luo Feng gently pinched her chin and blinked her eyes. Then in the future, this move shall be called hitting cow in air. This was the legendary move hitting cow in air. Long Fei blinked his eyes in a daze. Isn't this name too tacky? Just when he wanted to input his opinion, the man's deep and muffled voice slowly sounded, "All right." All right. Did he just say all right? He could actually accept such a tacky name. Long Fei was thoroughly speechless. His master's lover had indeed taken advice from her words. Oh right, master, how did you know that Lin Yuan had sexual fantasies towards a painting? Long Fei seemed to have recalled something as he questioned. Young Luo Feng looked at him. 3 days ago, after asked for my help, I sent Milk Tea into the city lord's estate to fish for information. I didn't expect Milk Tea to encounter such a scene. Long Fei originally thought that young Luo Feng had said it casually and didn't expect such a thing had actually happened. On the spot, he turned and looked at Su Zheng. Martial uncle, I didn't think there was someone even more vulgar than you. At most, his martial uncle merely flipped one skirt and stole undergarments. It was much better than facing a painting and doing such a disgusting action. In contrast, his own martial uncle was considered much more decent. That's right, Su Zhen raised his head and stuck out his chest, being immensely proud of himself. In any case, your martial uncle, is a person of honorable personality. How can that vulgar bastard be worthy to be compared with me? I despise him. Long Fei held his forehead. He truly did not wish to be acquainted with this person. Fortunately, everyone surrounding the city gates was encircling Lin Yuan and his daughter, and no one had paid attention to young Luo Feng's group. As such, their conversation was not heard by others. City Lord, we still have a matter that has yet to be resolved. How should we take care of these people who slandered you? As everyone is aware, the City Lord is besotted towards his wife and has never taken a concubine. There are only a few such faithful men in this world, but she actually falsely slandered the City Lord's feelings towards his wife and even claimed that he had a sexual fantasy with a painting of a woman. This matter could happen to anyone but absolutely not the City Lord. Furious pairs of eyes glared towards Yun Luo Feng, and their expression was just like they wanted to eat her up. Yun Xiao's hands once again slowly raised up. Just then, Yun Luo Feng restrained his palms while her smile appeared on her breathtaking gorgeous face. I'll gift you a sentence. If you don't want people to know what you did, don't do it. Lin Yuan's heart slightly trembled. Without knowing why, he felt that this young lady understood him completely. Seemingly she even knew his motive for going into the forest of no return. What nonsense are you talking about? He angrily shouted and pretended to claim innocence. I only want to ask you one thing. Will you promise that you will only exert yourself and not take any treasures from the forest of no return? Including any precious medicinal ingredients. Young Luo Feng slightly narrowed her eyes and a devious smile emerged on her lips. The feeling of finding treasures but being unable to take possession of them was exceptionally difficult to bear. However, the moment he wanted those treasures, it would also prove that what he said were all lies. Chapter 722, The Realm of Shamelessness 1. Lin Yuan's expression turned solemn. What do you mean by that? Unless you think that I will go back on my words. Don't assume everyone in this world is the same as you. Under Lin Yuan's righteous words, everyone angrily looked towards Yun Luo Feng. If someone who was unaware of the situation were to see this, perhaps they might have thought that Yun Luo Feng had done something that was intolerable towards them. Father, Lin Ruoxin looked at the young lady who was lazily standing and spoke with indifference. I think it wasn't on purpose that she said such words, so let's just forget about it. Lin Yuan's expression gradually relaxed and he spoke righteously with his hands behind his back. As the proverb says, no blame attaches to the unconscious doer of wrong. I can forgive you this time on the basis that you do not understand how I conduct myself. Next time, you had better ask around about the City Lord's character. Long Fei's expression changed, and just when he was about to speak, he saw Lin Yuan turning to walk into the forest of no return. As the person involved, young Luo Feng's expression was calm and undisturbed all along. There was a faint devilish smile on the corner of her lips and her body lazily leaned against the city walls, while her eyes contained a radiance that one was unable to decipher. I've seen shameless bastards before, but I have never seen a person shameless to such an extent. Long Fei's expression was cold and detached as he spoke expressionlessly. After we enter the forest of no return, I will definitely let them have a taste of suffering. Su Zheng's expression was also unsightly as he coldly stared at everyone entering the forest. A trace of a cold glimmer flashed through his eyes. Young Luo Feng looked at Su Zheng and spoke with her lips curved. In any case, you are a king spirit beast in this forest of no return. Why don't you exterminate these people instead of allowing them to enter? Helplessness was across Su Zheng's whole face. If I was able to exterminate them I would have long done so. However, other than me, all the king spirit beasts in the forest have been sealed. Therefore, I have closed a blind eye to these humans entering the forest of no return. Young Luo Feng raised her eyebrow and looked at Su Zheng, seemingly smiling yet not smiling. For Lin Yuan to conquer the forest of no return, he will definitely think of ways to break the seal. However, we do not trust him, so we asked Long Fei to invite you to head there together with us. If it weren't because of this, he would have started wiping them out long ago. Young Luo Feng stayed taciturn for a long time and then continued to ask, once Lin Yuan breaks the seal, isn't it akin to letting out the other king spirit beasts? As a result, won't he be in danger? In her mind, Lin Yuan would never allow himself to be in such dangerous circumstances. Su Zheng shook his head. Even if he breaks the seal, the other king beasts are not able to fight. There is currently no other fighting strength in the forest of no return besides me. Martial uncle, Long Fei's anxious voice suddenly sounded, those people have walked quite a distance. Should we chase after them? Su Zheng recovered his senses and nodded as he said, let's go. After saying that, Su Zheng's figure flashed past and disappeared before them. Long Fei no longer continued pondering as he hastily chased after them. Yun Xiao, let's set off too. Young Luo Feng lazily stretched her waist and her slightly narrowed eyes contained a dangerous glimmer. I will absolutely never allow anyone to touch Tian Ya's woman. Yun Xiao paused for a second and his gaze resolutely looked towards Young Luo Feng. Those people that you wish to protect, I will help you protect them. There was also another sentence. Those people that you want to kill, I will definitely help you eradicate them. However, he did not say the other sentence out loud because Young Luo Feng knew everything he wanted to say. Chapter 723, The Realm of Shamelessness 2. The forest of no return stretched long and unbroken for 1,000 miles. Within the underbrush, spiritual beasts would scuttle past from time to time, but very soon, they had been beheaded by Lin Yuan's subordinates. Young Luo Feng indifferently walked at the rear of the crowd. Compared to the others whose senses were stretched taut, her expression was very relaxed. What a joke! The king spirit beast of the forest of no return was right beside her, so why would she need to worry about those beasts that would attack humans from time to time? Perhaps because of Su Zheng's oppression as the king spirit beast, no one had dared to find trouble for Young Luo Feng and her group. Lin Ruoxin looked at Yun Xiao who was walking at the rear and an unknown glimmer flashed across her clear eyes. Ultimately, she picked up a canteen and walked towards Yun Xiao. I noticed that all of you did not bring any canteen. This belongs to our estate, but I'll loan it to you temporarily. She repeatedly mentioned all of you but her eyes were only locked on Yun Xiao and the canteen in her hands was offered to Yun Xiao. Yun Xiao seemed to not have noticed her emergence, and stared at Young Luo Feng all along. It was as if there was only her existence in his eyes and there was no room for others. Lin Ruoxin's expression was somewhat unsightly and her hand awkwardly stretched towards Yun Xiao. Just when she took in a deep breath and wanted to retract her hands, a huge rough hand extended out from the side all of a sudden and snatched her canteen. It seems like the miss of the city lord's estate is open-minded, Su Zheng sneered and spoke with sarcasm. Someone already has a wife, yet you still wish to seduce them. The upbringing of the city lord estate is truly great, having taught his daughter to seduce someone else's man. Although Su Zheng was comparatively more lecherous, he also had a certain standard. For example, he absolutely would never tease a woman that had a husband. This was the reason why he did not tease Young Luo Feng right now. Glup. After throwing those words, Su Zheng opened the canteen and raised his head to empty the bottle. He wiped his lips and spoke sneeringly, I'm tasting to see if this water has been spiked. Based on the character of you people from the city lord's estate, perhaps you would have done such a thing. Lin Ruoxin's expression instantly turned serious and her cold eyes contained a violent storm. What did you just say? Lin Yuan tightly clenched his fist. My daughter delivered water to you out of kindness, but who would have thought that you would accuse her falsely as such? It seems that being kind in this world isn't easy. Su Zheng snorted. He merely disliked this father and daughter's morality and conduct. Especially this Lin Ruoxin. Did they think he couldn't figure out that this woman was watching Yun Xiao during the whole journey? If she did not harbor such thoughts, then why did she not pay attention to others, yet insist on looking at Yun Xiao? Where did these people come from, and why did they set themselves against the city lord in every aspect? Even Miss Ruoxin's good intentions have been misunderstood by them. Based on Miss Ruoxin's beauty and talent, any man would follow her if she beckoned them. Although this man is quite good looking, his strength might not necessarily be worthy of her. Not taking the canteen earlier is also because he has some self-awareness, knowing that he is not well suited for Miss Ruoxin. Everyone angrily spoke and their angry words swept towards Yun Luofeng and the rest like a sharp knife. It was in Yun Luofeng's nature to protect the people around her and shield their shortcomings. She could disregard it if others were to speak about her, but she would never allow others to ridicule them. Therefore, after hearing their words, Yun Luofeng laughed and beckoned to the person who said the last sentence. You, come here. Chapter 724, The Realm of Shamelessness 3. That person was a youth in green long robes and he was considered handsome. Seeing Yun Luofeng gesturing for him, he stared blankly for a moment. What do you want? The young lady's smiling expression was exuberant. You'll know once you come. The youth was cursing to his heart's content earlier on, but looking at the young lady's breathtaking smile, it was like his entire being was pulled over as he walked towards Yun Luofeng. That's right, you're obedient, Yun Luofeng continued to wave her hands. You can come here at ease and I will absolutely not hit you. I only want to have a chat with you. The youth relaxed. With Yun Luofeng's words, he didn't need to worry that this woman would mount a sneak attack. Furthermore, he did not think that Yun Luofeng had the guts to raise her hand against him. Alright, I'm here. What words you have to say, you can. Before the youth managed to finish speaking, Yun Luofeng's leg kicked towards his stomach with a bang without even a warning sign. Her speed was so fast that he was unable to react. The instant that his body flew out, the young lady's bewitching voice could be heard. I won't hit you, I'll only kick you. Under the light breeze, the young lady lightly raised her eyebrows and both eyes contained a smiling intent. Alright, now we can chat. The entire forest became deadly silent. Everyone looked at Yun Luofeng with a dumbstruck look. Didn't she say that she would absolutely never hit him? Then why did she suddenly raise her hand against him? Where's the mutual trust between humans? Poochie. A mouthful of fresh blood spurted out from the youth and his hands tightly held onto his stomach. His complexion was as white as a paper as he angrily spoke. You're shameless. Thanks for your praise. There was a smile on Yun Luofeng's face as before. You're the 100th person till this day who said I'm shameless. Therefore, I shall accept your praise. Praise. Your head. The youth once again spurted out a mouthful of blood, and he was angered to the point he nearly fainted. Long Fei opened his eyes wide with astonishment covering his face as he thought, before meeting Lin Yuan father and daughter, I thought that my martial uncle was the most shameless person in this world. Afterward, because Lin Yuan was extremely shameless, the label of being the most shameless shifted to him. However, only at this point do I understand what's truly being shameless. Compared to master, how can my martial uncle and Lin Yuan compare to her? This was the highest realm of being shameless that no one could compare to. Lin Yuan was also shocked silly. Even though he was a hypocrite, he would not treat others insulting him as a praise. This woman felt no shame to say such words. Compared to her, what was his level of shameless considered? Her realm of shamelessness truly made others concede defeat. Yun Luofeng slightly smiled and turned towards those people who had been shocked silly by her. Do you all want to come and chat with me? The young lady's smile was just like a devil, enticing them to come forth. Whereas by taking a single step forward, they would drop into hell and never be reincarnated. City Lord, this. Suddenly, everyone's gaze turned towards Lin Yuan and they spoke hesitantly. Lin Yuan finally recovered his senses and his face turned serious as he coldly spoke. Miss, don't you feel that you're too overbearing? To actually assault someone before me. You are simply disregarding me. Are you worth my attention? Yun Luofeng swept a glance at Lin Yuan as she raised her brows and spoke. Lin Yuan was somewhat furious. Since you've followed me into the forest of no return, you should listen to my command. Yun Luofeng shot a cynical glance at him. Who said that I followed you into the forest of no return? Our route merely coincided. Chapter 725, The Realm of Shamelessness 4. Route coincided, Lin Yuan sneered, evidently not believing her. Since you want to follow, then I'll permit you. After all, everyone other than the men of the City Lord estate is destined to perish here. Since you've spoken so, then I shall not bother bickering with you. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan could not be bothered to fuss with her as he coldly shot a glance at her before retracting his gaze. We'll continue setting off. Lin Yuan's actions were within Yun Luofeng's expectations. She slightly curved the corner of her lips and spoke. Let's go. From the beginning, Yun Xiao did not speak. He merely retracted his gaze from Yun Luofeng and instead began to look towards Lin Yuan and the rest that was walking in front. Killing intent gradually rose within his unfeeling gaze. The road was very quiet afterward, and unfortunately, this sort of peaceful route did not continue for long as it was disturbed by furious howling. Roar! Suddenly, a large pack of wolves rushed from the front and pounced towards these humans. Within the crowd, someone spoke in an excited tone, "It's a pack of spirit wolves. It's rumored that there will definitely be treasures in the places where they are at. We've struck it rich this time around." Lin Yuan's entire being stared distractedly and his expression was somewhat surprised. Treasures? Could they truly discover treasures within this huge forest? While he was in shock, those spirit wolves had already pounced ahead of him. He quickly recovered his senses and fought against the wolf pack. A glimmer flashed through Lin Ruoxan's eyes and she gave the bodyguard beside her a meaningful glance. Noticing her glance, he nodded and shortly after, he acted as if he had unconsciously bumped against Yun Luofeng and her group. Bang! His body heavily fell on the ground and a fragrance pouch hidden in his pocket fell out. As luck would have it, the bodyguard's sword accidentally slashed the pouch. Instantly, a hole was sliced in the pouch and white powder spilled out from it. After smelling the fragrance of the white powder, the spirit wolves abruptly went berserk as if they had received some sort of stimulation and rushed in Yun Luofeng's direction. Looking at this scene, Lin Ruoxan lightly raised the corner of her lips. A smile unconsciously appeared on her face. Ever since entering the forest of no return, not knowing what was with the spirit beasts, they had never assaulted Yun Xiao and the rest all along. This resulted in her being unable to test to see if Yun Xiao was worthy of her. However, luckily she had prepared beforehand. As long as this 100-herb powder was spilled in front of him, any spirit beast that smelled this scent would turn berserk and launch a frantic attack. Of course, that was excluding spirit beasts with high intelligence. Other than knowing how to attack humans, this spirit wolf was weak-minded in other aspects. As such, having seen the pack, she wanted to use this and test Yun Xiao. After finishing the task and afraid of bringing disaster on himself, he hastily retreated and revealed the light. If one did not have the strength of a sky-level expert, it was impossible to deal with so many spirit wolves. It seems that these people would definitely perish here. Lin Yuan and the rest did not budge and acted as if nothing had happened while quietly standing on the spot, looking at them like a bystander. It was as if the person who directed the pack towards Yun Luofeng wasn't him. Virtue has its rewards and evil has its retribution. These spirit wolves abandoned attacking us because they can distinguish the right and wrong, knowing who is good and who is evil. After all, not everyone was able to identify the 100-herb powder. Some had never studied medicine, so they were naturally unaware that the powder would cause spirit beasts to turn violent. They stubbornly believed the wolves had assaulted Yun Luofeng because she was an evil person.